Drake, Texas Tech is on the other side of this Big 12 matchup. And so we previewed BYU. We talked about things from their side. I'm going to ask kind of the same question that I did in just a moment on what Texas Tech did right. It needs to continue to do this so you can kind of mind bounce that around a little bit while we talk about this. We talked about how big this was for BYU to make it. And Texas Tech feels pretty locked into the college football playoff. I don't even know if a 30-point loss, not that I would ever expect that, could knock them out at this point, although it is the committee, so I guess never say never. But I do think they are locked in. And that was my big question. When we were in the offseason, I said, dude, if they don't make the playoff and probably even like win a game with all of the investment they had, this will be a lost season. Like 9-3 is not good enough. 10-2 probably wasn't good enough because they wouldn't have gotten to the Big 12 championship and probably wouldn't make it in as an at-large when you see what they're doing to BYU right now. So I think, again, we'll talk about the game, but just big picture, I know that the ultimate goals haven't been achieved. You haven't really won anything yet. But for Texas Tech to be here, it kind of shows a little bit of a, hey, the proof of concept works. You invest, you spend, you bring in elite talent, you can get it done.
Texas Tech is going to blow out BYU. Like that's a statement that no one in the country would argue with right now. While I don't believe it, and I think this will be a very competitive football game, and I love the respect on both sides. I love the way that BYU respects Texas Tech. I love the head coaches that respect one another, the fan bases that have a love and respect for one another, which is very interesting and odd to see in the Big 12 title game, but it's the case right now in the Big 12 conference amongst BYU and Texas Tech. But if the statement is, from anybody in the country, Texas Tech's going to blow out BYU, that's one that can be quantified, qualified, backed up pretty easily because we just saw it earlier this year. This is the best team in the Big 12. Texas Tech is the best team in the Big 12 conference. 29-7 was the final score that first time around. And you cannot argue. It is objective that Tech is number one in the league. Now, I do not think BYU is near as far down the line from Tech as most people believe. I do think that BYU has a real shot to be competitive in this game. I don't think that's a hot take whatsoever. But if you're looking for Texas Tech to win this game, if you're looking for reasons for them to win this game, those are pretty easy to give you. Texas Tech being in the Big 12 championship is a huge success for Joey McGuire. And this is further proof that it's a Tech team that, you know, it wasn't back against the wall, but it was put up or shut up. We're going to give you as much money as humanly possible. You either win or you're not our guy. This is an outstanding campaign for McGuire and company, and I think that Texas Tech has every opportunity. It's interesting, even as I say this, though. You go back to, did we get beat that bad? You ever see those tweets from Stats Award? It's got like the graph.
Yeah, because we're always on the good side of it. We're always like, yeah, you did. You should have won the game, Florida State. What are you doing here? Yeah,
right.
I'm familiar.
So Texas Tech actually that week was only a 0.4 plus, a net rate plus above BYU, which was one of the lowest in the country of teams that won their games. So it was much closer on paper analytically than you would have expected. But I don't think that changes the fact that Texas Tech, A, obviously deserves to be here, and B, should win this game.
What went right for Texas Tech and what went wrong for Texas Tech that they need to improve on from that first matchup?
Yeah, what went right was their defensive efficiency. Incredible defense against the run. Every run play that BYU threw at them, Tech was ready for. They had sniffed it out. They were going to defend Bear Bachmeier at a level that he had not seen before. They were going to defend LJ Martin, one of the Big 12's most prolific rushers, better than he had seen before. 10 carries, 35 yards in that game for LJ Martin. That's just not good. And then Texas Tech, it's weird. For as much pressure as it felt like they got on Bear Bachmeier, for as good as the D-line looked, and it did lead to a couple of turnovers here, they only sacked Bear once. So while the run defense was there, I think Tech can do an even better job. Obviously, you can do better than one sack. Can do an even better job in this game at getting pressure on the quarterback that equates to sacks, to bringing Bear Bachmeier down behind the line of scrimmage. Now, there were a few times he only got a yard or two trying to run the football, but one sack feels small for what I assumed Texas Tech was going to do to BYU in that game. And then also, if we're looking at ways that Tech can improve, they did not, I mentioned this before, and I'll do it again. I'm not going to dilute the way that Texas Tech runs the ball, but there's a reason their analytics, their efficiency numbers are pretty low. It's because they have made their bed seemingly off of the chunk play on the ground. So again, Cameron Dickey, his 33-yard gain was his longest of the day. Jacoby Williams, 43-yard gain, his longest of the day. Put those together, that is 76 yards of offense on 2 rushing plays. Texas Tech had 149 rushes on 149 rush yards on the day. So 41 carries, you take half their rushing yards came on 41 carries. The other half came on 2 carries. That's where they can become more efficient in the run game when they score off against BYU again. I think that'll be a lot of the focus this week in practice.
Just before we go on, I will remind you that all of our content is brought to you by Sleeper this year. We appreciate Sleeper for their support and hope that you are using their app with the code CFA for a 100% match up to $100. Make sure you check their terms and conditions because terms of use do apply. Make some money with us live on Wednesday on the Power 2 here on College Football Addiction when we pick the more or less games. Do you think that and from the BYU side, will they try to defend against that explosive play so much? No, because it's almost like pick your poison, right? Do you want to continue to, from a down-to-down consistency and efficiency basis, take things away? And how do you change up just a little bit so you're not giving up those 2 explosives that ultimately end up being maybe the difference in you having a shot in the fourth quarter and you not, but also not sacrificing, the fact that down to down, you were pretty good against them against the rush.
No, this is for Texas Tech. We're going to wear you down. We're going to. I mean, my favorite early drive for Tech in that game against BYU was 5 minutes, 12 plays, 92 yards. They go down and score a touchdown. And listen to these: 6-yard pass, 6-yard run, 9-yard pass, 2-yard run, 5-yard run, negative 1-yard run, 37-yard pass, 8-yard, 1-yard, 5-yard, 5-yard, 9-yard. There's that one little chunk play mixed in the middle, but it wasn't that chunk play that ultimately buried BYU. It was Texas Tech's ability, even early in the game, to move the ball slowly down the field. So I do not think, and keep in mind, the next drive, BYU has the ball for 5 minutes and misses a field goal. They make that field goal, it's 10-3. We've got a much different ball game. But then Tech goes on their next drive, 8 plays, 59 yards and a field goal. They just had this way about them early in the game of holding on to the ball. What happens in the second half is BYU gets worn down. That's where the Tech chunk plays come from. That's where it feels a little more like Texas Tech can establish the run because they're rushing the ball for, there was a 33-yard carry. There was a 43-yard carry. And that's where Tech began to turn BYU over, either turnover on downs, fumbles, interceptions, and it just became chaos for the Cougars. They were playing from behind. It was only 13-0 at halftime. They forced a punt on Texas Tech's first drive. You didn't have to freak out, but BYU freaked out a little bit. They couldn't figure it out. So I don't think that the emphasis this week for Kalani Sitake and Jay Hill is to limit the chunk plays. It's more so, hey, if we get down by 10 points, which there's a likelihood that we do, don't freak out. This has happened before to BYU. They're prone to getting down early.
Yeah, they showed a good resiliency to come back this week on the road after being down 14-0, and they went on that big run that we talked about. I asked you this on the other side too, so I'll ask it. Is there an X factor? Is there a player? Is there a matchup in this game from the Texas Tech side that maybe intrigues you more than others?
Yeah, I do. I don't ever want to correct you because you're right about almost everything. BYU was at home this week, which makes it even grosser. That 14.
Oh, you are right. Yeah,
which is even more gross. Right? I knew they were in the comment section just typing away right there. I wanted to save you. But it makes the 14-0 seem a little bit more like ooh. But
what are you doing?
Obviously they came back to 41 straight or whatever it was to blow out UCF. And look, that's where I think we're going to look at matchup advantages, and ways that this game will unfold. I think for BYU, it's hard to say we are better than Texas Tech at this position. A more mobile quarterback is maybe the most prolific way you could use that example, but Bachmeier had less than 15 rushing yards the first time these two teams squared off. So I struggle to look at BYU and say matchup advantage, but I do look at BYU and say, hey, the thing that I like about this is you have come from behind in a lot of games this season. Maybe you won't freak out your second time around. Maybe you've got enough senior leadership to get down by 7 or 10 and still be able to be in the ball game. Then for Texas Tech, the matchup advantage in game one was Jacob Rodriguez versus the world. And he had an interception in that game, and he was just good old-fashioned Jacob Rodriguez. 14 total tackles, a tackle for loss, an interception. That's it. I mean, it's same old song and dance, broken record, no doubt, of like, oh, of course, they're going to bring up Jacob Rodriguez. You have to. How have we gone this long without? I mean, he deserves a shot at the Heisman Trophy, given his numbers are better than any defensive player we've seen the last 15 years in college football. Jacob Rodriguez is the matchup nightmare, and he wreaked havoc on BYU the first time around. I expect him to do that again.
I asked you this in the first one, and again, I'll get it. It's early in the week. I kind of like BYU to cover. I probably lean Texas Tech to win the game, but thoughts on how it'll go down or where you're leaning here on Monday?
Leaning right now at a Texas Tech victory. How could you not? They won 29-7. How could you not at least lean victory? I do not see blowout. I do not see cover. I don't see them winning by 14 points right now. I have a lot of respect for Kalani. I have a lot of respect for BYU. I think the Cougars keep it close, but Texas Tech wins this game by 3 or 6 points as we sit right now.
If you want the other side of this, we previewed the BYU edges inside of the matchup. You can click the video on the screen right now to see it. Drake, thanks for hanging out, bud.
Always, TJ.